Hey everyone, Del21 here. So we are now heading home from work in the Copart Ram. There's been no update with the Copart Impala. Still waiting on them to get the title. When I call once a week, they tell me that it's pending. Still, that's all they tell me. My next call is Wednesday. I mean, not Wednesday, Monday. My last call was Wednesday. My next call is Monday. There were a couple of Copart cars I wanted to get, but I can't really get them now because we're pushing so close to my trip to Korea that I can't actually I can't get anything. Like my trip to Korea is literally in 2 weeks, so there's nothing I can get. Well, I wanted to bring. Oh God, there's a goose. Literally, it was a goose. I basically wanted to do a Q&A with like 3 people that another goose. I'm sorry, the goose are like literally throwing me off. A little Q&A for like I think 3 people wanted me to ask questions. Actually, there's 3 people that asked questions. There's one person that I wanted to actually give a little advice to, that in case they didn't get my message. But the one question I was asked, it's a really simple one. Never sees on anti-seize on anti-seize on lug nuts. Is that okay? You will get mixed responses with this. In general retrospect, yes, it is okay to use them. Not like, oh God, let me keep this thing from not sticking to this type. Like a light coat on like one side of the thread and let the threads themselves, when you turn the tighten the lug nut down, spread the anti-seize around. Not like try to keep the whole thing. Some people will say that, you know, don't put any on there. The whole point of it being on there is to keep it from coming off. But that's what torquing the torque specs is supposed to do. In most cases, if you're wondering what that noise is, that is a valve seal keeper retainer tool that I have in the little pocket. Because I have to do head work on a 2011 Chrysler 200 2.4 liter i4. I got to do that. But anyway, yes, it is okay to do that. The whole deal is to not remember. Anti-seize is easy to throw around. That's why people tend to overuse it, which is why it's mostly said not to use it. I was also asked anti-seize on a oil drain plug. No. Okay, 2 reasons. One is your oil drain plug is actually, to be honest with you, in most cases, about 95 to 98% of the time, is made out of 2 different materials. And if they aren't made out of 2 different materials, they're made out of enough of a difference of material. Well, not difference of material. They're made of enough material to not strip out if you don't over torque them. So you don't need that on there. Another thing is got to remember, this never seize goes into your oil as well. I mean, you're not going to put enough in it to actually hurt anything, but it's less likely for you to want to put anything foreign in your engine anyway. The second thing I was asked, that was actually technically the same thing. The second thing I was asked is, with me having the 3.6 liter VVT, what oil do I run in this? Because there's someone that ended up getting a vehicle that was flooded. They changed the oil in it and they drove it. They got like 2 or 3 days out of it, and the truck ended up seizing. Now here's the thing. When it comes to flooded vehicles like that, not every flooded vehicle is the same. Not every flooded vehicle will react the same way. Different vehicles have different water levels. Different vehicles have different types of water in it. Certain waters have different contaminants that are in it. And here's the thing. This is why I really think that where you messed up. You only did one oil change. In a flooded vehicle, you never want to do just one oil change. You never, ever, ever, ever do that. Because you have to remember that oil's sole purpose is to capture particles as they lubricate. And if you have particles in your engine that, you know, the water level gets up to while it's in there, well, if you sit there and drain the oil once, you got to remember, those particles are not going to be high enough. I mean, the oil's not going to be high enough to take those particles with it. In most cases, the engine has to get up to operating temp to even allow that to even go. And you don't want to start your engine with that crap in there. So that's where I think you messed up at. You did one oil change. I don't know why it's not focusing right now. You did one oil change on your truck, and that was it. You shouldn't have done that. Not saying you can't do that, because some flooded vehicles don't get any water in the oil, and you can get away with one. But if you get water in the oil, I recommend 3. Okay. On this truck, I did 4 or 5. Because I found out as I was taking this truck apart that my ram was up to the windshield in water. That means every electrical component in my truck had to be replaced. Underneath the engine, in the engine bay, I got water in it. I had twigs. Yes, I had twigs in my lodge and valves inside of it. Now, the lodging of the twigs and the valve might have been when I was trying to get the computer and the electrical system to operate, because I did the electrical before I did the engine, and that may have been while it was trying to rotate over. But I had twigs in the heads. That's how much water was in it. In valves. So that was a lot of particles that were not going to be able to get gotten by the oil, because for one, the heads had to come off, because those twigs were not going to come off with no amount of oil changes. So on top of that, when I pulled the heads, even after I pulled the heads and cleaned them out and put everything back on, I did one oil change with cheap oil. I think, even though I say it was cheap oil, I did one oil change with, I want to say I did it with Walmart oil, or the cheapest oil I could get from AutoZone. This is what you would consider as a break-in oil, I guess. That oil's sole purpose was to try to slosh around and get whatever particles that the oil. Also, I don't think you change your oil filter but once. Also, you should have changed your oil filter multiple times. 3 at the most. I mean, 2 at least. I changed my oil filter 4 times. The first time I ran the engine, I did it for about, I want to say I got about 5 miles on that filter and oil. I drained that oil. I got all kinds of particles out of it. It still was milky. I stepped up the oil to, I used the cheapest oil I could get from AutoZone. And then I stepped it up to Walmart oil, the S-Tech or whatever tech it is. I stepped it up to that, and I put that in it, all full synthetic. I put that in there, and I ran that for about 10 miles. Again, on the same filter, though. No, I'm sorry. On a different filter. And then when I did the 10 miles, I drained that oil and upped it to Castrol GTX. I guess it's technically not conventional oil if it's fully synthetic. But I drained it to that. And at that point, I ran that for about 50 miles. And after that, I changed the filter. And I did not change the oil, I just changed the filter. I ran that for an additional 50 miles, which made 100 miles on that oil. I changed that filter again, and I drained the oil, and I stepped it up to something. It's the Castrol with the black Castrol with the titanium. That's what it was, Castrol titanium. I stepped it up to that. I ran that for 100 miles on a new filter, and then after I drained that, the oil was really clean. It was really clean coming out. After I did that, I stepped up, and I'm now running, I I'm currently running the same weight that normally comes in the truck, except I'm running Royal Purple. And here's the thing. I might actually do a video on changing the oil filter. In case you guys are wondering what that noise is, it's this. It's a, it's literally a valve seal. I mean, a valve keeper retainer installation tool. I keep 2 of these, and I don't keep 2 of these. I keep 1 of these in stock at all times. The reason being is if you order more than 2 of these, you get a discount. Whether you get a crap, I forgot what it is. But whether you get a discount at the dealership or not, if you go to the dealership and order more than 2 of those are about $11 a piece. That filter has been in this truck. Let's check. Okay. Can we flip you around? We cannot. Let's see. Let's check. That oil filter has been in here. I never reset it. I did it at 3,000 miles, so it's been in there for about 1,244 miles. So I have about 1,244 miles on that filter that's in it. To be honest with you, changing the oil at this point is a little redundant, when being that I only have 1,200 miles on it. Actually, changing the filter might be too, but I might change the filter just for you guys to go over that. I don't know. I might not. Actually, what is my idle time? What is my idle time? What is my idle time? Let's see if I can get an engine hour time. Stored messages, screen setup, miles. Go up. Vehicle information. The truck has been idling for 231 minutes. I've driven it for 1,042 hours, worth a total of 1,272 hours. What that entitles in miles, I'll let you guys do. The truck currently has 1,273 hours of actual engine hours, and it's got 26,728 miles on it. So I'll let you do the math and see how many. I don't think those are the numbers you need to calculate that, how many miles it should have on it. Well, it's 231 miles idle, 1,042 driving. So those are the total hours for the vehicle. Currently, the transmission's at 181. Great. The coolant's at 208. It's warmer than what I'd like it to be, but no, it's at 210. But it's well within normal. Oil pressure's at 30. 45. All right. One thing I like that Mopar went to where you can monitor the an active oil pressure, but it does freak you out. For us Mopar people that have gone through not having these kinds of quirks on some of these vehicles, such as the actual oil filter. I mean, the oil filter, but the oil pressure moving. Usually for us Mopar people, the oil filter, the oil gauge doesn't move until it gets low on oil. An active oil gauge is something that we're not used to. And for us that mechanics that do Mopar that don't really pay attention to that, because we're not used to that active oil pressure, when we look at that oil gauge and we see 28, 25 pounds, we're freaking out. And usually it's at idle that it's at that. Now, I'm just going to let you know this. If your car is sitting idle at 28, 25 pounds, maybe kind of pushing at 25. But if your car is rushing about 28 pounds or so, idle, it's fine. Usually in your manual, it'll say something about it being okay. But if you're going 28 PSI going down the road at high speed, I would not I'd get it looked at, because you should not be running a low oil unless you have one of these electronic electronic oil pressure pumps, electronic oil pumps that regulate their oil pressure at speed. Now, if you do not know if you have one, disregard everything I just said, because you're just going to confuse the hell out of yourself. If you are aware of what that is and you know your car doesn't have one and it does that, get it checked out, because your car should not have a low oil pressure. It's really not good to have a low oil pressure when your vehicle's running at high speed anyway, regardless. But apparently, computers have figured, it's more fuel efficient if it drops the oil pressure, to do whatever it likes in life. But if your oil pressure drops to a certain amount when it's idling, it's fine as long as it's within your parameter. Now, I don't care what your parameter says. Low oil pressure when your car's driving down the road is not good. Even though the computer is telling it to not do that, it's not good. The more oil pressure is better, but too much oil pressure is bad. Which why it bothers me when the thing sits here. I mean, on the gauge, there's a mark. If it's just below the half mark, I don't bother with it. If it's above that mark, I don't bother with it. But if it gets over to the 3/4 mark, thumbs up. If it gets to the halfway mark or the quarter mark, I'm probably shutting the truck off. Just saying. But, I mean, I'm not really expecting it not to. Primarily being that, this was a flood truck, so I would expect oil pressure issues. But again, I changed my oil 4 times. I changed my filter 4 times. So I'm not 100% certain the system. Well, actually, by now I am. I've driven the damn thing for a year. I've literally driven this truck for a year now. So I'm certain that I've gotten that ironed out. But when I first did it and I had the 4 oil changes, the 4 oil changes done. Now, when I say the 4 oil changes, I'm not including the oil changes I've done every 3,000 miles since I got the truck. The truck, when it came, had 19,000 or something thousand miles on it or something like that. I don't know. But I'm not counting those oil changes. I'm only counting the oil changes I did when I first got the truck and I got it running. So, the oil filter. Yeah. For the transmission. Jesus Christ. This thing is expensive as hell. I think it's like $180 for the filter itself. And then you have like the oil, the transmission fluid itself is almost like $300. I changed the transmission fluid in this truck at least 6 times. But I only changed the filter twice. I did a spill and fill 3 times on the old filter. I changed the oil pan, which is also the filter, and put a new one on it, drained the transmission fluid 2 more times through the new filter after running the transmission through the new filter 2 more times, and then changed the pan 1 more time, and then put the new pan on and put new fluid in it. So this thing's had 2 transmission fluid filter pans, and it's had exactly, I want to say, 4 filters and 4 oil changes in a month to get it where it is right now. So like right now it's at 24 pounds and it's freaking me the hell out. So a little bump and it goes up. So I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna get food, and then we're heading out. Peace.